Does an orthopedic condition or sports injury have you sidelined? Make your comeback with GW Hospital Sports Medicine. We offer services from neck to toe, including care for shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, and hands. Plus, we're the official healthcare partner of GW Athletics, the DC Furies, and the DC Revolution. Get back to doing the things you love. Learn more at GWHospital.com/sportsmed or call 888-4GW-DOCS. Physicians are not employees or agents of this hospital.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Chris Clark is out at yet another Shane Beamer football camp today, though it is it still raining outside? I can't really see the street from here. I know it was raining when I came in this morning.
Very dreary.
Very dreary.
Right now. Wah, wah, wah.
Now, did they move these in like the indoor?
They do
like
a lot of it inside anyway, so they'll make do. They spent enough money on that beautiful indoor facility that they can make do with it actually pretty well.
I would hope so.
Yeah, that honestly, I've said this before. You know, spent a lot of facility upgrades over the last decade, but that indoor is probably the best facility upgrade they've ever made at South Carolina, in my opinion. I remember. So for those who don't know, I mean, these are high school camps. So you got mom and dad sitting out there with lawn chairs for hours while their kid competes. So I remember Steve Spurrier prospect camp, and the indoor did not exist yet. And so you're, June 13th in Columbia, South Carolina.
Very hot.
98 degrees. And mom is sitting out there in her lawn chair just baking in the sun. And then, you're trying to use these as a recruiting tool too, to like get prospects on campus.
Sure.
Who has fun sitting in the Columbia heat and then going back to, Virginia with a sunburn like that? That's not the best way to present your school. And so now they actually run the entire thing out of the indoor facility. Okay. So that's where everything's based out of. Some of the workout is outside. O-line, D-line camp, they do actually do at the stadium, so it's outside the entire time, but it's a little bit shorter. It starts out in the morning, so it's not quite as hot yet. At the end of it is hot, but that actually ends usually around noon, 12:30, something like that. So you're not out there basically all day in the sun. The other parts of the camp kind of starts out indoors. They'll move them outside a little bit. Then they'll be separated out by position groups. Some of the positions will be outside. Some will be inside. So it really kind of works out.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Chris is out there covering that today, and we'll get more of his insight on that when he's in studio with us tomorrow. And then you'll be out there for Friday's session, and obviously tomorrow's very big day, not only from the camp standpoint, but also getting set to welcome in another host of official visitors for this weekend. Most of those guys being already in your committed class for 2024, and we've talked about how busy this month of June has been, and perhaps the busiest weekend of them all coming up this weekend.
Yeah, we talked about it leading into it. You have 3 big weekends for South Carolina, 3 big official visit weekends. This is obviously the third, and really, I was looking back. Some of these guys that they brought in, that were uncommitted were players that, maybe South Carolina was fresh on the radar, or South Carolina was in a position where, they had just offered a couple of, few weeks ago or so, and you really didn't know where the Gamecocks were going to fall, like where they were on this. And, I think you look at this group right now, you look at the guys that are coming in this weekend, and 3 of the 4 uncommitted guys are what you would say are long-time South Carolina targets. Obviously, you look at Dylan Stewart. I mean, I remember being at camp this time last year, Tyler, watching Dylan Stewart compete and watching him work with Sterling Lucas, and he's a guy that even before that, I remember hearing the name Dylan Stewart, like, hey, this is a high priority at the time, sophomore for South Carolina. And him coming in, I think, for maybe the spring game or a spring visit or something like that. So you look at Daniel Hill as well, 4-star athlete, going to be a running back for South Carolina. That's where they want him at. And I remember, I don't remember the exact time, but I remember just hearing his name extremely early in the process. Jonathan Paylor is another guy. We heard about him, golly, man, I think it was this time last year, maybe last spring. So you're talking about uncommitted players that have been firmly on the South Carolina radar for over a year now, and you're trying to just basically close out these recruitments, and I think with a couple of those guys, and, we can dive into them individually if you want, man. You can take it wherever you want, but individually, everybody has a little different, plan for how they want their recruitment to go. But right now, you look at probably 3 of the 4, add in David Boosie, who is kind of a newer addition, newer target. He wants to decide soon. You look at Daniel Hill, he's kind of talked about deciding soon or waiting until the fall. Jonathan Paylor, he wants to decide soon. And then you have Stewart, who it seems like at one point was kind of looking at doing the whole summer decision, but now there's been a lot of buzz about him potentially just waiting it out. So some different timelines involved here, some different sort of approaches to the recruiting process. But if you're South Carolina, I think you can leave this weekend, possibly having 2 or 3 of these guys at the very least, silently committed and maybe going public a little bit later on. I think Paylor has said he's going to make his announcement in July. So generally, if a guy has an announcement timeline set like that, they won't go ahead and announce, a decision. But if you're Carolina, I think you could maybe leave this weekend knowing exactly where he's going.
You mentioned possibly 2 or 3 guys coming away from this weekend. Obviously, you'll have Dylan Stewart being a 5-star coming out at that edge position. But looking at these other 3 guys, if you had to pick just one to add to that list of maybe 2 guys you could get coming away from that weekend, which one would you choose?
Other than Dylan Stewart?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think Dylan's probably the easy answer. Man, I think I'd have to go Daniel Hill. I like Paylor a lot too. You can make a case, but I think at receiver they obviously already have Mazio committed. I think they're in great shape with Keelan Adams. They're in on some guys at receiver and already in a good spot with them. They need a true difference-making running back, I think, in this class, and Hill has kind of emerged as that guy for them. So I think you look at his talent level, you look at the need, you look at the fact they've put in so much effort into being in the spot they're in with him. I kind of look at it like a race that, you've been in the lead for a while, and you're just trying to hold off, these other contenders. So it would be a tough pill, I think, for the fans to swallow too, to kind of know you were leading the race for, let's say, especially if you decide soon. So let's say like next month is your finish line. You've been in the lead for like half the race, so it would be pretty tough to swallow not finishing the race, out front. And I think, it's kind of interesting. I think it's maybe tightened a little bit. We were wondering who was going to emerge maybe as South Carolina's biggest competition. It feels like, that role goes to Alabama at this point. He's just off his Alabama official visit. Reading what our friends at Bama Online are saying. Bama, they've got some confidence on their end coming off of that official visit. So, I think it has tightened a little bit, but I think South Carolina's still in the best position here. I think they feel good about where they're at. I think they should feel good about where they're at. It's just about closing this thing out with him and finishing the process this weekend. And I think convincing him to go ahead and decide. Well, and with Hill, you mentioned the depth at that position. That can't really be understated. And I talked about this a little bit earlier with Colin, but we talk about going in this season, the running back position. We assumed they were going to pull somebody out of the transfer portal. And, they talked about Logan Diggs. He ended up obviously going to LSU, which made a lot of sense given his connections to Brian Kelly. But we're sitting just over 2 months away from the season start. And in South Carolina is still looking at a running back room of DeCarrion Joyner, Juju McDowell, and Mario Anderson. And obviously DeCarrion Joyner will be gone after this season. He'll have exhausted his eligibility at that point. So when you talk about building depth, and obviously Dontavius Braswell coming in as a true freshman this year, you're still going to be very thin at this running back room by the time 2024 rolls around. So adding another body like Daniel Hill will shore up those numbers a little bit more. Yeah, I think as a guy who really could potentially play early and will have the opportunity to play early, well put together prospect physically, and he's an athlete, man. I think I like guys that can do a lot of different things, that have some versatility, and generally those guys are going to have some upside. I think generally those guys are going to be able to kind of adjust to what you're asking them to do pretty easily because they already do so many. They're kind of dynamic. They already do so many different things well. So I think Hill's one of those guys. You look at his film, you look at his 7-on-7 stuff. He can play linebacker, he can play wide receiver. That speaks a little bit just to his overall athleticism, and he's a multifaceted guy. So I think it sets up for him. Some of those guys will obviously be back for South Carolina, but a talented guy like this, even potentially enrolling early and going through spring next year and kind of looking ahead to that depth chart, I think obviously we'll have a better feel when we see what Braswell can do. Is he a guy who takes a big step forward as a true freshman this year, or does he not? And if he doesn't, I think then you're looking even more at saying, well, Hill is most certainly going to come in. I think you can already project that he's going to play as a true freshman, even as far out as we are. But how much and what that looks like is probably going to be a little bit determined by what we see this year. But even just the pure numbers, man. I mean, Joyner, he sat right here and told us this is finally this is finally it. I don't think there's any years left in there. So
unless we have another pandemic, which I'm not in the mood for, quite frankly.
Let's not even put that out there. I'm with you, man. So this is it for Joyner. That's one more guy out of the room. We'll see what the other guys do, but I think and Juju's getting up there in eligibility as well. He's got a couple of years left, including this year, but. We'll see what that position holds.
Absolutely. And again, big weekend this weekend with the official visits as well as camp going on. We don't have a check-in from Chris today with camp, do we?
I don't think so, because I think it is, from what I'm hearing, tomorrow and Friday are going to be a bit bigger days as far as really having something to talk about. I think this is a little bit lighter of a day.
Okay, well, we'll get Chris's insight on what he observed today. Tomorrow, then, as we roll on with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
You've heard us tell you about Firehouse Subs and the sub of the day now for months, and the sub of the day rolls on. Today is, of course, Wednesday, which means is your New York Steamer. You can get a $7.99 medium or a $5.99 small. But Firehouse Subs has also relaunched their Name of the Day campaign. And so basically what this means, and so today, any name out there, this is not just one name, not just three names, any name that contains a Z. I was about to say any name that starts with a Z, but Tyler, this is any name that even has a Z in it. Any first name. So it could be anything from Enzo to Zion. If it has a Z in your first name, by showing your photo ID at any U.S. Firehouse Subs today, June 21st, you will get a free medium sub with any purchase. There'll be a new name tomorrow, so if you want to check that out, go to firehousesubs.com/name of the day, whatever day of the week it is. That will tell you on that particular day if maybe your name is the name of that day. So again, Firehouse Subs, our awesome sponsor here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Go to firehousesubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app and hit the Rapid Rescue now.
A great day to be Mazio Bennett then, huh?
It is. Nice tie-in, Tyler. I like that. He will be on campus this weekend.
There you go.
For his official visit. I'm sure there are Firehouse Subs in Greenville.
Of course.
So, Mazio, free medium sub, man.
There you go. Coming up next, the ongoing saga of EA Sports and the college football video game for 2024. We've got new layers to it that involve lawsuits. We'll talk about that next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
Are adventure and relaxation on your mind? Jump in the car and head to Fauquier County, Virginia this weekend. Just a short drive from D.C. off I-66 and nestled in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Fauquier County has it all, including picturesque hiking trails, Rappahannock River access, plus over 25 wineries, breweries, and cideries. Visit the many unique shops and farm-to-table restaurants of Fauquier County's towns and villages, or take in the many historical attractions suitable for all ages. Check out visitfauquiercounty.com. That's visit FAUQUIER.com. Fauquier County. Find what you love.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you on this Wednesday. Chris Clark back in studio tomorrow as he's out at yet another Shane Beamer football camp today. I teased this before the break. Ongoing saga of EA Sports trying to get this college football video game out. In 2024, another group has come forward now, the Brander Group, and they are launching a lawsuit against EA Sports in reference to the potential payout for players being in this game. We know it was a couple weeks ago when the College Football Players Association called for a boycott. As we learned, that group didn't have a whole lot of traction as they weren't as well established as the Brander Group is, that does have licensing contracts with more than 54 Division I institutions. Earlier this morning, Athlete Advantage, which represents more than 100 college football players, also released a statement in support of the Brander Group that is launching the lawsuit against EA Sports.
Tyler, are we going to get a game, man?
I really hope so. I feel like we're going to get a game regardless. The question of whether we get actual players in it or not is up in the air right now.
Yeah, and so I don't know if we're going to be able to edit players either, because I feel like
probably not. I
feel like that's what part of what got us in this in the first place.
A little bit.
So I've seen, and originally I was like, well, we'll just edit the thing and it'll be uploaded to the internet and you download it and everything's cool. Tyler, I got a feeling, man. I think that's gone. I don't think that's happening.
You might have to rely on, and there are people that have done this with the NCAA 14 game, the last one. You have to rely on the people that can get in and mod the game from the inside.
Break the thing,
and they have to download this whole other thing and generates a whole new game.
Most people don't want to.
Most people don't want to do that, but that might be the route you have to go if you want to see the players that you actually know in the game in 24, because as of right now, it seems like the paying players $500 is a flat fee to be in the game, not going over too well. And the unfortunate part about all this is as we see more of these groups get involved, it's becoming less and less about the players themselves, and to me, more and more about the business of how much money can we squeeze out of the EA Sports to get this done.
Yeah, and so the College Football Players Association, as we talked about, whatever that is,
sure,
has called for a boycott of the game. This brander group called the payout, quote, far below market value. And it kind of sounds to me, a lot of these organizations, I'll say, are kind of wanting to still keep their importance.
Sure.
And they don't want this thing to be negotiated, or really, they don't want there to be a lack of negotiation, basically, of a flat fee. Here's a licensing agreement, and it's either take it or leave it. It sounds to me like they want to be involved. They want their cut, more than likely. They want their whatever percentage they're getting.
Sure.
They want that, and they want to sort of show that they have a place in all this. Well, I personally have not really seen too many players coming out strongly suggesting $500 is some low number, like, oh, that's a ridiculous number. Like, I thought all this was about the actual players themselves.
Yes.
So why don't we let the players decide if $500 is worth it for them to be in the video game? Like, there's some short-sighted thoughts on this, I think, from these companies that maybe need to think about who they're actually supposedly, quote, representing.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part about all this, because when you talk about this market value, that yes, there's these small 1% of players in college football that, okay, maybe $500 isn't enticing to them because they're raking in NIL and, want somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000, something like that. But the other 99% of players across college football, the backup offensive lineman or the, freshman cornerback for Toledo or something like that, $500 would do them just fine, and they would love to have the opportunity to get that money. But my fear with all this is with more of these groups coming forward and launching lawsuits and so on and so forth, it's going to get to the point where the EA Sports is going to put their hands up and say, forget it, no players in the game, we'll do the generic thing, nobody gets any money. So while, again, that may not really be a blip on the radar for the guys that are already, big shots anyway and breaking in a lot of money with NIL, those guys that aren't getting anything that would love to have that $500 might miss out on that opportunity.
And the opportunity to be in a game where basically you are your name and your face is immortalized into a video game. Like I think for a lot of people 18 to 23 years old, that's kind of a dream come true. How many of these guys, man, when we talk to on Garnet Trust interviews and are just like really able to talk about different things other than an interview setting, you ask them, what do they do during their free time? Like, oh, me and the guys are gamers. Like, we play. Like, it's something they do. So to be in a game, a lot of them play Madden. To be in a game, I think is a special thing. So I'm not saying $500 is life-changing money by any means.
Sure.
But I don't think that's some low like total either, because if there's what I think 129 FBS.
I think we're a little over 130 now, but you're in the ballpark. So yeah.
So I mean, all right, let's just go 130.
Sure.
And not even including walk-on guys, you have 85 scholarships.
Yes.
So that's 11,000. Is that right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's 11,050 student athletes. So you're talking about having to divide the pot, so to speak, by a lot of people, right? So it's kind of like what they're going off of a $5 million pot of money.
Yeah, and doing that math there with a little over 11,000 players, that works out to about $5 million when you divide it across, having everybody get an equal payout of $500. And I was talking with Terry about this earlier, and one thing that EA Sports wants to avoid with this, because this isn't the NFL where you have guys that are around for 12 to 20 years, and they have their own players associations, so that's its own different thing. College football is so, short term, where at most you're out of school for 4 years. And a lot of these guys are only there for 3 years. And some guys, transfer and all this kind of stuff to where EA Sports does not want to have to keep renegotiating with these players every single year, because you have a new crop of, okay, these are your 1% of players that deserve more this year and this year and this year. They just want to be able to say, hey, you want to be in the game, here's $500, you'll be in the game, and be done with it. Because again, as you said, if you're trying to divide up this $5 million amongst 11,000 players, that's going to get messy and something that they're not going to want to do every single year.
Yeah, and hey, I think that's a good point you just brought up too, man, that I haven't thought about. So, yeah, this is going to be for a handful of years, and I think EA kind of has to take it or leave it approach to it. The second you kind of open the door to different negotiations and stuff like that, you probably have issues. But the game comes out every year, so if you're in school for 4 years, that's $2,000.
Yep,
that's $2,000 that, frankly, you had to do no legwork to earn.
Yeah, just be on a college football roster.
Just check yes. Check yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
And then I would imagine they're going to have people come in and do a big photo shoot. Or I would think the way technology is these days, man, they'll probably the guys can just download an app and take pictures of their face. And they could probably pull it off the roster photos, honestly, as good as that stuff is these days. So it's point being, time is money. And you're getting an easy $500 to also, again, be immortalized. That's the part that would be. I know some people, if you don't play games, I don't really play them anymore. I used to when I was that age. I played them all the time.
Sure.
I feel like that's a pretty cool thing, and you're getting paid. It's not like they're just saying, "Hey, no, we're stealing your name, image, and likeness," which is pretty much what they were. They were still in their likeness before. They weren't still in their names, but they were certainly still in their likeness before.
Right. And again, I don't have any doubt the game's still going to come out sometime next summer, but the question of whether we're actually going to have players in it or not remains to be seen. So we'll continue to keep our eye on this as the timeline goes along. Up next, going to have a little bit of fun. On3 tweeted out something yesterday. They got a lot of people talking. I want to look at this at both a South Carolina perspective and a national sports perspective. Up next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Hey, guys, if you're looking for that special gift for that special graduate in your life, look no further than our friends at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia. Owner Kendall Smith and manager Joni James, they took great care of us when we were broadcasting live from Gold Line Framing last month, and they can take great care of you as well for any and all of your custom framing needs. Of course, that includes, like I've been telling you all for the last month, diplomas, but it can also be original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags, pretty much anything. They'll frame it up for you and have it looking great so you can hang it on your wall or, again, give it away as a great gift. They've been in business for over 20 years. They are over at 511 12th Street. That is in West Columbia. On location, they have an art gallery, they have home decor, they have furniture and gift items all right there in store. If you have questions, their number is 803-739-1337. They are open Tuesday through Friday. That's 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And then on Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also, you can give them a follow on Instagram. That's at Goldline Framing SC. Again, at Goldline Framing SC on Instagram. For any and all your custom framing needs, it is Goldline Framing in West Columbia.
The biggest what-ifs in South Carolina sports. Talk about that next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, Presented by Firehouse Subs.
Are adventure and relaxation on your mind? Jump in the car and head to Fauquier County, Virginia this weekend. Just a short drive from D.C. off I-66 and nestled in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Fauquier County has it all, including picturesque hiking trails, Rappahannock River access, plus over 25 wineries, breweries, and cideries. Visit the many unique shops and farm-to-table restaurants of Fauquier County's towns and villages, or take in the many historical attractions suitable for all ages. Check out visitFauquierCounty.com. That's visit FAUQUIER.com. Fauquier County. Find what you love.
107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you on this Wednesday morning. Again, Chris Clark will be back in studio tomorrow telling us everything that he saw out there at Shane Beamer football camp today. I mentioned this before the break. Yesterday, On3 tweeted out a photo of Joe Burrow in an Ohio State uniform. And the question they asked is, what's the biggest what if in college football history? I want to tie this in a little bit more locally here and certainly get involved in the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. What's the biggest what ifs in South Carolina football history? Wes, what do you think?
Well, I think first I can steal Chris's answer because I know he put one on Twitter, so he's not here, so I'm going to steal his first. You'd have to recently go back to, South Carolina in 2012 when they lost at LSU and when they lost at Florida back-to-back, and just one of those scheduling, just brutal inconsistencies there where and I know you remember the South Carolina-Georgia
I do
2012 game.
Try not to, but
those who don't know, Tyler is from Georgia, so
that was not a fun day.
That was a great day for Gamecock fans.
I know it was a great day for y'all. Not a fun day for me back then.
Possibly, honestly, at the time, possibly one of the greatest days in South Carolina football history.
I mean, they beat the crap out of them.
That was as dominant as South Carolina has ever beaten Georgia. And, South Carolina, I think that was a top 6 matchup. Both teams were undefeated.
Both teams were undefeated.
Both teams were top 6.
Did Carolina get up to number 3 that year? Was that the highest they got?
I don't know what they got to after that win. But I think that was, depending on the poll, that was like number 5 against number 6 or number 4 against. It was, huge day in Columbia. Game day came.
Sure.
It was a night ESPN game. You had Herb Street on the call. It was incredible. And then you go to LSU, get beat, and then got blown out by Florida. Now, there's a lot of talk for that Florida game about. This was kind of, this happens every couple of years. There's a game where like a bug or virus or the flu goes through the team. It was rumored going into that one that like 15 to 20 guys were sick. Lattimore was banged up. Everything went wrong for South Carolina against Florida. That was one of those classic Muschamp where they had like 150 yards of total offense, but were killing South Carolina at one point because of so many turnovers.
Sure.
I truly actually believe that team could have won a national title.
Yeah.
So I would say even if you erase one of those games, South Carolina's in a position. You can go 1 year later, the loss at Tennessee for South Carolina. That team, while not quite as good as the 2012 team, in my opinion, probably in a position to go win the SEC potential. They would have represented the East.
Yeah.
If they didn't get beat by a Tennessee team that was down.
Yeah, because I remember Missouri, they kind of, was it 13 when they kind of backdoored their way into the SEC championship game, or was that 14? I think it might have been 14 where they backdoored in. I think they were a little more legitimate in 13.
Yeah, and but South Carolina had beaten Missouri.
That's right.
But they needed Missouri to lose one more game.
Yes.
And it went down to the final day, basically. They needed Missouri to lose one more game because South Carolina would have had the tiebreaker.
Right.
Because that was the Connor Shaw game
Yes.
where Carolina looked just did not play well for most of that game against Missouri. Gave up a long touchdown early, didn't do much on offense, and then basically Shaw comes in and just goes down the field and ties it up and then puts themselves in a position to win in OT. They had the ball go off the crossbar. So, yeah, those are the local examples.
I would also have to bring up what if, and this obviously was over multiple instances, but what if Marcus Lattimore has a healthy career at South Carolina? I know he had that great freshman year in 2010, but then injuries obviously riddled him in 2011 and 2012, and we never saw the complete Marcus Lattimore for those final 2 years.
Yeah, that's definitely, if you want to put it like more as far as just anything, that one's definitely up there, man. And you just such a great dude too.
Absolutely.
And fan favorite for obvious reasons. And what could have been there, I mean, he'd maybe still be in the NFL right now if not for all that. Your fans that are a little bit maybe older than I am would have to say 1984, South Carolina losing to Navy. And South Carolina, I believe this was y'all can hit the Firehouse text line and correct me because I'm not looking this up right now, but I believe that was the second to last week of the regular season. But yeah, a Navy team, South Carolina was undefeated at the time.
Hi, it's D Smooth here. Black History Month and Juneteenth are very important events to me because I believe in celebrating our culture and the many accomplishments of the black community. Join me as we celebrate freedom through food and fellowship with Safeway, Saturday, June 17th. We're honoring Juneteenth at the Safeway store at 2845 Alabama Avenue Southeast with tastings from minority-owned businesses, live music, face painting for the kids, and more. Head over to @safeway.com/Black History for details.